Hello, Mr. Richards here. Today's lesson, our first in our Chapter 2 on percents, is percent of a number. And as we look at our real-world link on pets, some students are collecting money for a local pet shelter. The model shows that they have raised 60% of their 2000 goal, or $1,200. Number 1 asks us, fill in the decimal and fractional equivalents for each of the percents shown in the model. Well, 80% as a decimal can be written as 0.80. 60%, 0.60. 40%, 0.40. 20%, 0.20. Then, to go from decimal to fraction, we can say, all right, that's 80 over 100. And then we can simplify that by dividing by 20 on top and bottom to get 4/5. 60% we can write as 60 over 100. And again, can divide by 20 on top and bottom to get 3/5. 40%, 40 over 100. And we'll divide by 20 on top and bottom again to get 2/5. So use the model to write two multiplication sentences that are equivalent to 60% of 2,000 equals 1,200. Well, we could use the decimal form and write 0.60 times 2,000 equals 1,200. And we could also write the fractional method, 3/5 times 2,000 also equals 1,200. So as we look to find the percent of a number today, we can do so using both fractions and decimals. So almost summarizing our real-world link, find the percent of a number. To find the percent of a number such as 60% of 2,000, you can use either of the following methods. Write the percent as a fraction and then multiply, or write the percent as a decimal and then multiply. And so in our guided examples, it shows both methods. Find 5% of 300 by writing the percent as a fraction. Well, any percent such as 5% we can write over 100. Now it is easier to simplify before we multiply, so 5 over 100, if we divide by 5 on top and bottom, is 1/20. And then we'll take 1/20 of 300 by multiplying 1/20 times 300. And hopefully you can see here where we cross-simplified, divided both the 20 and the 300 by 20, multiplied and got 15. So 5% of 300 is 15. You could also find 25% of 180 by writing the percent as a decimal. And to take a percent, such as 25% into a decimal, all we have to do is move our decimal point back 2 spots to the left, and it turns it into 0.25, which is what they used here, 25% as 0.25, or 25 hundredths. And then we multiplied. After multiplying, they got the answer of 45. So 25% of 180 is 45. And we're going to practice both of those methods below. For A and B, we will write as a fraction. For C and D, we will write as a decimal to get practice with both. I'm going to move up here to the top left in order to show enough work, or to have enough room to show work. And so as we have A, 40% of 70. If we choose to write this as a fraction, 40% can be written as 40 over 100. And before we multiply, I believe it's easier to simplify. So if we divide both the top and bottom of this fraction by 20, we will get 2 over 5, 2/5. Next, take the 2/5 and multiply by 70. Now that 70 we can write as 70 over 1. And if we cross simplify, we can divide both the 5 and 70 by 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 70 divided by 5 is 14. And as we multiply across, 2 times 14 is 28. 1 times 1 is 1, and so our answer is 28. So 40% of 70 is 28. Let's look at B. For B, we have 15% of 100. Let's write our 15% as a fraction, which is 15 over 100. And for this question, we can divide by 5 on top and bottom in order to simplify this fraction. 15 divided by 5 is 3. 100 divided by 5 is 20. So if we take our 3/20 and multiply that by 100 over 1, we can once again cross-simplify the 20 and the 100 by dividing by, well, this time 20. 20 divided by 20 is 1. 100 divided by 20 is 5. And now we can multiply across. 3 times 5 is 15. 1 times 1 is 1. And so our answer is 15. So 15% of 100 is 15. Now let's try our decimal method. In C, we're looking for 55% of 160. Well, 55% as a decimal, we move our decimal point back 2 spots to the left, so it's going to be 0.55. So as we move in here a little bit in order to show some more detailed work to multiply this, we're going to take our 160 and multiply it by 0.55. And so now we're going to multiply as if the decimal was not there. Just multiply like it was 160 times 55. 5 times 0 is 0. 5 times 6 is 30. And 5 times 1 is 5, plus that 3 is 8. And so now, for our next row, we'll bring a 0 for our second row. And then 5 times 0 is 0. 5 times 6 is 30 again. And 5 times 1 is 5, plus that 3 is an 8 again. And so now as I add these up, 0 plus 0 is 0, 0 plus 0 is 0, 8 plus 0 is 8, 8 plus, well, just itself, I guess, is 8. And now we need to make sure we finish. We have 2 numbers to the right of the decimal point in what we're multiplying. And so we need 2 numbers to the right of our decimal point in our product. And so our result here is 88. So 55% of 160 is 88. Now as we look at D, 75% of 280. I'm going to show this work down here. So 75% as a decimal. Decimal points right here for now. We're going to move it back twice to the left. So this becomes 0.75. And then we're going to multiply 280 by 0.75, or 75 hundredths. And so as we multiply, 5 times 0 is 0. 5 times 8 is 40. 5 times 2 is 10, plus the 4 is 14. And then for our next row, we start with the 0. 7 times 0 is 0. 7 times 8 is 56. Carry the 5. 7 times 2 is 14. Plus 5 is 19. Oops. And then as we add these, 0, 0, 10, 11, 2. We need two numbers to the right of the decimal point in our answer. And so we have two numbers to the right now in our answer. What is our answer? What is 75% of 280? 210. And so to find percents of numbers, one thing you can do is to multiply by a fraction. The other thing you can do is to multiply by a decimal. Both methods work. So if we can find percents of numbers less than 100, we can also find percents that are greater than 100 using the same method. Percents that are greater than 100% can be written as improper fractions, mixed numbers, or decimals greater than 1. So 150% is 150 over 100, which simplifies to 3 halves, or 1 and 1/2, or 1.5, which is 1 and 5/10. And so you can multiply by 3 halves or 1 and 5/10. And that's what we're going to do in our guided examples here. In guided examples 3 and 4, find 120% of 75 by writing the percent as a fraction. 120% is 120 over 100, which simplifies to 6/5. So we're going to take 6/5 times 75. Now, since we're finding a percent greater than 100, our answer should and will be bigger than that 75. And sure enough, as we go through the process, 6/5 times 75, cross simplify, multiply, we get 90. 120% of 75 is 90. You should expect a larger answer. Find 150% of 28 by writing the percent as a decimal. Well, with our 150%, remember, your decimal's here. We move it back twice to the left. So our percent of 150% written as a decimal is 1.50, or just 1.5. Same decimal. So 28 times 1.5 is going to end up with 42. So 150% of 28 is 42. Now, we're going to use both methods here for E and F. For E, we will use the fraction method. So let's come up here and solve E. E is asking us to solve 150% of 20. We'll turn 150% into a fraction. 150 over 100. And if we divide by 50 on top and bottom for this one, we get the fraction 3 halves. So 150% as a simplified fraction is 3 halves. Next, take that 3 halves, multiply it by 20, which is the same thing as 20 over 1. We can look to cross-simplify, divide by 2, divide by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 20 divided by 2 is 10. 3 times 10 is 30. 1 times 1 is 1. And so our answer is 30. So 150% of 20 is 30. And if you just think about that for a second, what's 100% of 20? Well, 20. What's 50% of 20, or half of 20? Well, 10. So 150% of 20 is that 20 plus 10, which gets us the 30. So even mentally, it works out. Now let's go down and look at F. 160% of 35. Let's write 160% as a decimal. Right now, the decimal point's here. 2 spots to the left is going to get us a new decimal of 1.60. And so as I multiply these together, I can take my 35 times simply 1.6. I can kind of just leave off that 0. And now I multiply. 6 times 5 is 30. Carry the 3. 6 times 3 is 18. Plus 3 is 21. Start with the 0. 1 times 5 is 5. 1 times 3 is 3. Add these up. 0, 6, 5. And now we have one number to the right of the decimal point in the numbers we multiplied. So we need one number to the right in our answer. So our solution here is 56. 160% of 35 is 56. And so our answers, E, 30, F, 56. And as we look to finish up this lesson, our 5th guided example, refer to the graph. If 275 students took the survey, how many can be expected to have 3 televisions each in their houses? Well, as we look, we have 3, and that's 23%. If there's 275 total, we need to find 23% of 275. They chose to write 23% as a decimal, multiplied by 275 to get 63 and 25/100ths. Well, if we just take 63 students, that's a good answer. If it was 63.5 or 5/10ths for your answer, you might round up to 64 for that. But we'll just take 63 students are expected to have 3 televisions each. Now, as we look at G, Mr. Sudamak earned a 4% commission on the sale of a hot tub that cost $3,755. How much did he earn? Well, as we come over to our workspace, I'm going to zoom in so I have enough room to show you here. We need to find 4% of 3,755. Let's use the decimal method. Let's take 4% as a decimal. Well, right now, our decimal point's right here. We need to move it back to the left 1, 2 spots. Now, I don't have anything right here, so I do need to put the 0 in as the placeholder so that 4% is 0.04. A common mistake with percents to decimals is that 4% becomes just 0.4. That's not right. 40% is equivalent to 0.4 or 0.40, but 4% is 0.04. So be careful with that as we solve these. Now, we can set this up to multiply. 3,755 times 0.04. And now 4 times 5 is 20. Carry the 2. 4 times 5 is 20, plus the 2 is 22. Carry that 2. 4 times 7 is 28, plus 2 is 30. Carry the 3. And lastly, 4 times 3 is 12, plus 3 is 15. Now we don't need to multiply this 0 through. What we do need to recognize is that I have 2 numbers to the right of the decimal point, so I need 2 numbers to the right of the decimal point in my answer. And so what is my answer going to be? $150.20. And that is it for this lesson on percent of a number. You can take your percents and write them as fractions and then multiply, or you can take your percents and write them as decimals and then multiply. Good luck.